The snow was coming down so hard you couldn't see 3 feet ahead, and Marcus watched the woman across the cabin pull the thin emergency blanket tighter around her shoulders. Her lips were turning blue. Then she looked at him with those determined eyes and whispered the words that would change everything. "Can I slip under your blanket with you? I think it's the only way we'll make it through the night." He hesitated for just a moment, thinking about his daughter waiting at home, wondering if he'd ever see her again. If stories about unexpected kindness and human connection warm your heart, you're in the right place. Subscribe to Kindness Tales and hit that like button. Share your thoughts in the comments because we love hearing from you. Now, let me tell you how a single father and a corporate CEO found themselves fighting for survival in a way neither of them ever expected. Marcus Thompson had been driving back from his daughter Emma's school play when the weather report suddenly changed from light snow to blizzard warning. Emma was 8 years old, and she'd played a dancing snowflake in the winter performance. Marcus had promised he'd be home by 9 to tuck her in and hear all about how it felt to be on stage. His sister was watching her, and he'd already called to say he was running a bit late. The mountain road he took was usually faster, a shortcut he'd driven 100 times. But tonight, the snow had other plans. His phone buzzed just as the visibility dropped to almost nothing. He glanced down for a split second, just long enough to see it was Emma calling, and when he looked up, there was a car sideways across the road. Marcus slammed the brakes, his truck sliding on the ice, and he managed to swerve just enough to miss the other vehicle. But his truck went straight into a snowbank, the impact jarring his whole body. He sat there for a moment, hands shaking, making sure nothing was broken. Then he heard a voice outside. A woman was stumbling through the snow toward his truck, her business suit completely inadequate for the weather. She knocked on his window, her face pale with cold and fear. Marcus rolled it down, and she practically shouted over the wind. "Are you okay? I hit black ice and spun out. My car won't start, and I can't get any signal on my phone." Marcus checked his own phone. No signal. No bars. Nothing. He looked at the woman, really looked at her. Designer clothes, expensive bag, the kind of person who probably spent more on shoes than he made in a month. But right now, she just looked scared and very, very cold. "There's an old ranger station about half a mile up the road," Marcus said. "I've seen it on my drives. If we can make it there, we can wait out the storm." The woman nodded, her teeth chattering. She introduced herself as Catherine Wells, and Marcus shared his name as they abandoned both vehicles and started the trudge through the deepening snow. The wind cut through their clothes like knives, and Marcus gave Catherine his jacket even though it left him in just a flannel shirt. She protested, but he insisted. "I grew up in Montana," he said. "I'm used to this." The walk to the ranger station felt like it took hours, though it was probably only 30 minutes. By the time they stumbled through the door, both of them were shaking uncontrollably. The station was bare bones, just a single room with a fireplace, a few emergency supplies, and 2 thin emergency blankets. No power, no heat, no phone line. Marcus immediately went to work trying to start a fire, but the wood was damp and wouldn't catch. He tried for 20 minutes, his frozen fingers fumbling with matches, but every attempt failed. The temperature inside the cabin was dropping fast. That's when Catherine made her suggestion about sharing body heat. Marcus felt awkward about it, but he also knew she was right. They were both showing signs of hypothermia, and those flimsy emergency blankets weren't going to cut it. He spread one blanket on the floor and motioned for her to sit beside him. Then he wrapped his arms around her, and they huddled together under the second blanket, their bodies pressed close in the darkness. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Marcus thought about Emma, about how scared she must be, wondering where her daddy was. He thought about all the times he'd worked double shifts at the construction site to make sure she had everything she needed, how he'd become both mom and dad after his wife left 3 years ago. He'd promised Emma he'd always be there for her, and now he might break that promise because of a stupid shortcut in a snowstorm. Catherine broke the silence with a quiet question. "Do you have family waiting for you?" Marcus told her about Emma, about the school play, about how his daughter was his entire world. Catherine listened, and he could feel her relax slightly against him. Then she started talking too. She told him she was the CEO of a tech company, that she'd been driving back from a business meeting where she'd just laid off 200 employees to boost quarterly profits. "I told myself it was just business," she said, her voice cracking. "But the truth is, I stopped seeing people as people somewhere along the way. I stopped seeing their families, their struggles, their humanity. I just saw numbers on a spreadsheet, The confession hung in the cold air between them. Marcus could tell she was carrying a weight that had nothing to do with the storm. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked gently. Catherine was quiet for a moment. "Because I think maybe I needed to almost die to remember what actually matters. Here you are, giving me your jacket, keeping me alive, and you don't even know me. You probably have less than I do, but you're more generous than I've been in years." They talked through the night, sharing stories and warmth. Catherine asked about Marcus's life, really asked, the way people rarely do. He told her about working construction, about the struggle to afford Emma's asthma medication some months, about the joy of seeing his daughter smile when he surprised her with a trip to the aquarium she'd been dreaming about. Catherine talked about her own childhood, growing up poor, fighting her way to the top, and somewhere along the way forgetting the people she'd left behind. "I have everything I thought I wanted," she said. "But I can't remember the last time I did something that mattered to anyone but myself." As dawn broke, the storm began to clear. Marcus managed to get a fire started with some old newspapers he found, and they warmed themselves as the sun rose. A rescue team found them around noon, alerted by Catherine's assistant who'd raised the alarm. They were both checked by paramedics and cleared to go home. Marcus called his sister immediately, nearly crying with relief when he heard Emma's voice on the other end. Catherine stood nearby, watching him with something that looked like longing. Before they parted ways, Catherine pressed something into Marcus's hand. It was her business card. "I mean this," she said. "Call me." Marcus pocketed it politely, assuming it was just something people like her said, a gesture that meant nothing. He went home to Emma, held her tight, and tried to put the whole terrifying night behind him. 3 days later, Catherine showed up at the construction site where Marcus worked. She was in jeans this time, looking more human than corporate. "I did something," she told him. "I called back every single person we laid off. I found positions for most of them, and for the others, I'm personally funding their job searches and covering their health insurance for 6 months. It's going to cost me, but you know what? I finally feel like myself again." She paused, then added, "And I set up a trust fund for Emma's education. Full ride, any school she wants, including medical expenses. Consider it a thank you for saving my life, and for saving something in me I thought was dead." Marcus tried to refuse, but Catherine was insistent. "You gave me your coat when you were freezing," she said. "You gave me your warmth, your stories, your humanity when I'd forgotten what any of that meant. Let me do this. Let me remember what it feels like to use what I have to actually help someone." So Marcus accepted, not for himself, but for Emma, for the future his daughter deserved. They became unlikely friends after that, checking in on each other regularly. Catherine started mentoring young professionals from disadvantaged backgrounds. She changed how her company operated, prioritizing people over profits in ways that actually made the business stronger. And Marcus, well, he kept being exactly who he'd always been, the kind of person who gives his coat to a stranger in a storm without thinking twice. Sometimes the greatest acts of kindness aren't grand gestures. Sometimes they're just being human when someone needs humanity most. Sometimes they're sharing your warmth when everything else is cold. That night in the cabin, 2 people from different worlds saved each other in ways that had nothing to do with the storm outside. Marcus showed Catherine that compassion isn't weakness, it's strength. And Catherine showed Marcus that people can change, that hearts can thaw even when they've been frozen for years. What if we all approached each other with that same openness, that same willingness to see the person behind the circumstances? What if we remembered that every stranger is someone's whole world, just like Emma was Marcus's? The next time you have a chance to share your warmth, in whatever form that takes, maybe you'll think of a single dad and a CEO trapped in a cabin, discovering that kindness is what keeps us alive in more ways than one. Drop a comment below and share a time when someone's unexpected kindness warmed your heart. Sometimes we all need reminding that even in the coldest storms, human goodness is the light that guides us home.